Good evening. Thank you for joining us tonight. I'm Rob Mullins, Director of Athletics at the University of Oregon, and I'd like to welcome everyone to our Ducks Through the Decades panel discussion. Ducks Through the Decades is a continuation of our department and community-wide conversations that began last summer and our collective desire to turn a moment into a movement. With the leadership of a few of our inclusion committee members, I'm Rob Mullins, Director of the Subcommittee of the Student Athlete Advisory Committee. UO Athletics has celebrated Black History Month throughout February by highlighting groundbreakers from the department's history. Tonight's panel is full of groundbreakers, UO legends, and we appreciate their passion and willingness to join us tonight to share their experiences. I also have the honor tonight to introduce the moderator for tonight's distinguished panel. Orlando Williams is one of the top 10 scorers in UO men's basketball history, having averaged nearly 15 points per game for the Ducks from 1991 to 1995. At the time of Orlando's graduation, he was Oregon's all-time leader with almost 300 career three-pointers. Orlando has enjoyed incredible success after graduating from UO and currently serves as the president, CEO, and chief equity officer of Modus Recruiting and Staffing, Inc., a company he founded in 2006. Orlando's always had a special skill connecting with fans. I'm told he was kind of ahead of the curve regarding our throwing the O. Whenever Orlando would make a three-pointer at UO, fans would put their arms up in the air and make an O. He also had a great opportunity to serve as a player and community outreach ambassador for Goodwill for the world-famous Harlem Globetrotters. Orlando, you're a great ambassador for UO, and we sure appreciate you leading tonight's important discussion.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Rob. It was an absolute pleasure. Thank you for that wonderful introduction. Sometimes I wonder if those are actually things I actually did. So it is an honor to be here and celebrate Black History Month with the University of Oregon. And it is also my honor to share the platform with an all-star cast of distinguished guests with former Ducks and Hall of Famers, a distinction that I do not have, Anthony Newman from the football program. And we also have another Hall of Famer in Jordan Kent, who I'm honored to be with and work with the Portland Trailblazers. And then two-time U.S. champion and Olympic gold medalist, English Gardner. Welcome, English. And current volleyball student athlete, Gloria Mutiri. Pleasure. Welcome in each of you. It is an honor to be sharing this wonderful platform with you all, and then also to share in this Black History Month momentous occasion with the University of Oregon. So tonight we'll get an opportunity to hear from each of you, and you'll have a chance to share your experience at the U of O and just what it means to you to have been a Black athlete in Eugene, Oregon at the U of O. So we're going to jump right in. And I would like to start by just asking English, if you will kick us off and share with us how you ended up at the University of Oregon and what were some of the most momentous occasions that you remember of being an athlete at the U of O.
Funny story. I wanted to be an LSU Tiger so bad. I really did. And I tore my ACL my junior year of high school, and a lot of the colleges kind of dropped me and didn't really want to recruit me. And one college that stuck there and came and did the house visit and made me feel special, made me feel at home, was Oregon. And so when they decided to take a chance on me and still recruit me after my major injury, I decided, it's okay that, they never had a predominantly sprint program and was really known for a lot more distance, but I was willing to go there and take a chance on the school as well as they took a chance on me. So it was a match made in heaven.
That is absolutely wonderful. We all remember the days in the history of Prefontaine, but to get some sprinting going on at the U of O is a wonderful thing. What do you remember? What is one of the moments that you can recall, or that you think about, I should say, that you think about that is just stands out for you above others?
I remember my first major track meet at Hayward Field. I remember the way it felt when I walked in for my shakeout. I remember what it felt like when I was in the clerking area. I remember how I looked up in the stands and literally from the bottom to the top, very top, was full of people, and the energy inside was intoxicating. And I haven't yet been at another stadium, even on an Olympic stage, have yet to be on another stadium and feel that feeling. And so I'm super excited to come back and run again in Hayward soon.
Awesome. Well, I know we all look forward to it. So thank you for that. Let's jump to Anthony. Uh, you have had an incredible career, both collegiately and in the NFL. How did you make the transition to U of O, and what do you recall about your days on the gridiron in Eugene?
Well, for me, I'm a local kid. I'm from the state of Oregon, so I was really happy that I was going to stay in the state. And I'm an only child, so it was just me and my mom and my dad. And I wanted them to be close to me, close to the game, so they can drive to the games and have to travel far. I was brought up all about family. My mother had 18 brothers and sisters, but she had one child. So it was just about me, my mom, and my dad, and we were really close. My dad went through some tough times. He was the second black police officer hired in Portland, so he had to go through a lot of tough times of dealing with being a police officer in Northeast Portland, where it's mostly black, and then yet also deal with police officers on Portland Police that weren't so good at the time. Back in the late 70s, mid 70s. But for me going to Oregon, it was all about family. So that's what it comes back to when I was talking about my mom and dad. It was all about family, how the coaches recruited me, how the players took, they really reached out and said, "Hey, Anthony, we really want you on with this program." And I felt that there's closeness. There's something there that I want to go to. Since I'm leaving my mom and dad, and I was a homebody. I just always was staying at home, just doing nothing, we're just hanging out with them. I wanted to go to a place that was all about family. It wasn't about the football part of it, the education and just being around people that make me feel comfortable. And it's kind of funny because when you think about being a black man going to the University of Oregon, I was used to the situation, meaning growing up in Portland. I didn't grow up in Northeast Portland where it was mostly black. I grew up in West Portland. So during high school, during middle school, I was like, 6 black kids in the school, and you're sitting in a classroom and you start talking about Black History Month. Everybody's looking at me, thinking I have all the answers, or what am I going to say about the situation? As I went to Oregon, there was only black athletes at Oregon. That was it. There was nobody on campus that was black. So it wasn't any different. But there's some things that happened at Oregon, we'll get into that later, that really, brought my attention to a lot of stuff and how I feel today.
That phenomenal. Thank you for sharing that. And so now let's go to Jordan. And Jordan, you were in Eugene and have a long history with the U of O, family history. So tell us about your transition to the U of O and maybe some of the more memorable moments for yourself.
Yeah, thanks, Orlando. And it's great to be here with everybody also. And when I look at my time in Eugene, my dad was the head coach of the men's basketball program at the time, and he was a former Duck. And for me, I was basically born with wings, you could say. And to get an opportunity to play for my dad at the Division I level, at the time, the Pac-10 Conference, and also run track at Oregon, much like English said, you've seen Hayward Field when it's stacked top to bottom. It was a moment I didn't want to pass up, an opportunity I knew I had to seize. But I had an interesting perspective of growing up in Eugene outside of the university. We lived probably 15 minutes away, but as a lot of you understand, it's a different culture around campus. And once you leave that bubble in Eugene and you get to the other parts of town, it's not a very diverse town or diverse area. And so it was really interesting living as a citizen in Eugene, where you didn't see a lot of diversity in town or in the state for that matter, especially in the Willamette Valley. But then going to Oregon and being around so many different people of color and cultures and backgrounds was a wonderful experience. And getting a chance to then take those moments and those relationships in Eugene and make them a part of my background and make it a part of my experience was something I was really, really grateful for. But yeah, very fascinating perspective of being just a high school kid in Eugene, much like Anthony said, where you're one of maybe 5 or 6 black kids in the school, to now having at minimum 5 or 6 black teammates on your basketball team. And I was really grateful that I was able to experience that in Eugene at the University of Oregon. And as we talk more, it's also a wonderful opportunity as a student athlete to interact with more people in the community and leave a lasting impact.
Oh, that's excellent, Jordan. And you were a 3-sport athlete, so that perspective offers additional uniqueness to us. So thank you for sharing that. And since you mentioned about just kind of the life and being on campus, Gloria, who is currently an athlete, currently going through the experiences as a student athlete, and doing it very well, I might add. Gloria, share with you your transition to U of O and what it is like currently for you there as an athlete.
Yeah, it's definitely been a different look because I transferred here and we're in the middle of a pandemic and we're trying to get used to like everything going on with adjusting with being in practice and with masks and just a whole new way of playing volleyball. But I came here early last March, and since then it's just been so much fun. It's been a new experience, and I've had so much fun playing with my team and these coaches and the environment in Eugene, even though I haven't been able to see it live action. But it definitely was a needed transfer. And once I got here, I realized that I'm exactly where I need to be. So it's been a very great opportunity.
Excellent, excellent. Thank you for that. So I want to go back to you, Anthony. You talked about your father being a police officer and growing up in Portland and having that be a shaping moment for you. What kind of conversations did you have at your home around race and identity? And what kind of conversations did you have with your father in preparation for Eugene, a much different environment from the Portland area? Can you share a little bit about that?
Yes. Well, the conversations that I had with my father, I remember like it was yesterday. They were at dinner time, and it's kind of crazy and kind of strange. There's a police officer who's my father that's always explaining to me, how do I deal with by being pulled over as a young black man? How do you deal with that? And what's the process? And he used to tell me the steps by steps that I needed to take as a young black man being pulled over. And it's kind of funny because, you know, we talk about this throughout communities and white and black. And, you know, in the white community, I don't think that's part of the conversation at the dinner table about how do you deal with being pulled over and what do, you know, hands at 10 and 2. Make sure that you get your wallet, your driver license, and your registration out before you stop the car. So you get it while you're driving, while you're being pulled over. The police officer doesn't see you reaching for something. Those type of conversations were, you know, quite a bit in my house because my father didn't want to lose his son, his only child, and also being a police officer, he was very protective of what was going on out there with the police because that was his teammates, the other police officers in Portland, Oregon. And so it was a battle for him. But fortunately, I was raised up well. I was never in trouble. I still don't have a speeding ticket. So being pulled over wasn't a thing for me. But that conversation also went on to my children as well, because, hey, just in case you get pulled over, here's the conversations we're having at our dinner table. And it's kind of strange. You know, you're trying to keep your son or your daughter alive. Those conversations were there. Another reason why I chose Oregon is also I wanted to have my father and my mother close to me all the time. I wanted them to, if I had issues, things going on, you know, again, I was like, I can go home, get on I-5 and boom, you know, down the freeway and I'm home. But getting to Oregon as a young man and seeing what was going on there and being part of that family. And there was a family inside of a family, and which is weird when you think about football. And we always say that there's no racism in football. Once you're on a football team, that's your family, and everybody loves you. There's no color in football when you're on your football team. And I know it's basketball, track, things like that. But there's a family inside that family. There's the family where you see for Oregon, we had a lot of black players from Southern Cal, from Compton, from Banning, from Los Angeles. And so those as those kids came to Oregon, they feel comfortable kind of going towards those other kids who are from Los Angeles. And those guys kind of stuck together. And that was a family inside of a family. Now, there wasn't no separation. They just kind of hung to guys that they were close to. They felt comfortable with. But still, there was a big family atmosphere. And that's why I love Oregon today.
Oh, thank you for that. It's amazing when you begin to think about family and how you can maybe be a little insular in Eugene, and hopefully that helps you through the process being a Black athlete. But I just want to maybe ask you, English, you're a U.S. champion, Olympic gold medalist. What would you say to that? And then has your success impacted how you show up and how you view the world as a Black woman? Has it changed at all? Do you think that people see you differently now that you've accomplished a level of success? And maybe was that success transferable in Eugene as well?
I would say that when I first got to Eugene, I really didn't know what to expect. I just knew that when I got off the plane, everybody was a little bit more like scary movie nice, like tried to on campus. I noticed that it was a safe environment on campus. I didn't realize it was about 2012 when I had my first incident with life outside of campus, and I decided to, venture out. I remember I was moving off campus, and I had rented a U-Haul, and I was driving through Springfield, and I got pulled over, and that was the first time that I ever got pulled over. Didn't think anything of it, but in that transaction of me getting pulled over, I definitely noticed that the color of my skin was a part of the reason why I was being treated a certain way, why I was questioned a little bit more. There was a little bit more force with some of the uh, way he was handling me, but I never experienced that on campus, and so I realized that no matter how far I go, no matter how high up in the ranks I climb, I could be a world record holder, I can be the fastest woman alive, I'm still a Black woman. And I think not taking against any other person, but when I think about my own personal life, I feel outside of my sport, I am the most hated person in America because I am Black and I'm a woman. And we're not respected at all. And we're seen as weaker, and we're seen as not being able to accomplish some of the goals. So that did in return make me have a little chip on my shoulder a little bit when I was at Oregon to excel the way I did and to perform the way I did. But I don't feel as though my performance has whited out the fact that I'm Black.
Thank you for sharing that. And certainly we have work to do that we could ideally have our society have the same level of respect for the performance and the success as we do in other aspects, whether we're moving or whether we're doing other things. So thank you for sharing that. Jordan, you lived in Eugene. What kind of conversations, and I know your father very well, great coach, great man, great human being. What kind of conversations did you have for your preparation for the U of O and just being a young Black man in Eugene and a very successful athlete?
Well, as English alluded to, it's a different environment on campus versus off campus. And my dad being the first Black head coach in the school's history carried a lot of weight with it. And I remember him talking to me about some of the opportunities he had when he was a player at Oregon in the 70s. And what he said was, make sure you interact with the community when you get that chance to be an ambassador for the university at your time at Oregon. And whether it's going to an elementary school and reading to some kids or getting a chance to speak at a Rotary meeting, he said, the interaction that a lot of people in Eugene have with you may either be their first interaction with a person of color or one of the few interactions they have with a person of color during the course of a year. And I remember my dad telling me that people aren't born racist. It's something they learn or is taught to them or something that's explained to them at a young age. And if you can have an interaction and build a relationship with people, that's how you can break down barriers. That's how you can break down prejudices. And carrying yourself in that way and having that opportunity to work with people in town and work with the folks that support this university, that are fans of the university, and show them that a person of color in Eugene is more than just an athlete. You can really change their whole perspective because of their exposure to you. And that with that, it's a wonderful opportunity and a responsibility also. And so when I was making that transition from moving 15 minutes onto campus, I knew that, all right, those opportunities to interact with people at different events could hold a lot of weight for them down the road. And it has been really fascinating to see how those relationships have developed over the last couple of decades to where people have had their eyes opened. And when you look at everything that a student athlete at Oregon has, it's an interesting place because the University of Oregon is the show in Eugene. I think arguably second to the Trailblazers in the state, it's the next biggest ticket possibly. And you're on a pedestal as an athlete at Oregon. There are a lot of eyes on you, whether you like that or not. So you have a chance to use that platform, to use that exposure to build relationships. And when you get a chance to do that, you get a chance to control the narrative in which you interact with people. And the more that I think we continue to do that at the University of Oregon, I think the more that we're going to see diversity continue to flourish in Eugene, because it is amazing how much more diverse not only the student population has become, but the city has become over the last 25 years. From when I was there in 97 to here we are now, you are seeing the complexion of Eugene change. And I think that's because of all these multiple interactions that student athletes are having with their community and the impact that they're having. And they're not just sticking to this bubble on campus. They're getting this opportunity to reach out and expose people to different cultures and different backgrounds and different ways of thinking. And that only benefits the university. And so sort of carrying that torch and getting that chance to say, hey, I'm going to, really get a chance to build an authentic relationship with you. And you can understand that this is who I am and this is my culture and this is my background. And it's nothing to be afraid of or anything to think differently of based upon what you were maybe told at an earlier time in your life, I think held a lot of power at Oregon.
Oh, excellent. And certainly it serves the community well when there is ambassadors, when there are individuals who carry that and can go into the community and make a difference. And certainly you continue to do that. I'm curious, Gloria, if you feel the same type of call to be an ambassador. You're currently at the U of O. You're active. You made the transition. Do you feel that call? And were there conversations that you had to prepare you for being an ambassador? What are your thoughts on what Jordan went to the community and make a difference? And certainly you continue to do that.
Yeah, I definitely feel like
I'm curious,
coming here,
Gloria,
there was a new adjustment,
same,
and I needed to do as much as I can to continue to foster inclusivity and diversity however I can. I think the impact of the Black Lives Matter movement and George Floyd and Breonna Taylor really put pressure on me. Like, what can I do? Like, how much can I impact my community? How much can I impact our athletics and my team and the relationships that I have? So, coming here, we started Be United for a safe space for our Black student athletes, and it was so helpful just to even see like people who look like you and be able to talk to them like, hey, like, you won't believe what happened to me in Walmart. Someone came and touched my hair, or just talking about things that we can all like relate to. There's so much power in like having that community, and also knowing that doing as much as I can doesn't mean that I have that huge role to to play all the time. Because at the end of the day, like, I'm a student athlete and I'm a Black woman in society, and there's only so much responsibility I can put on myself. And there should be a lot of pressure from people who are higher up, from our athletics department, from Eugene, and honestly just from the United States in general, to continue to foster inclusivity instead of making it a personal rule. But everyone can play their part, and everyone can do what they can do to make sure that everyone feels like I have a space here, like I'm safe here, and I can communicate my issues. You know, I think United has done a really good job, and I think our athletics department has done a good job of continuing to build those relationships and make people feel like this can be your safe space and you're welcome here. So I think that everyone's really doing their part, but I think United has been a really good tool for that, especially Eugene, and I know that's an opportunity, that's something that we've recently started that a lot of other people here haven't had a chance to be part of or have that when they were in sports here. Continuing to build those relationships.
Thank you. Excellent. And I may have lost sound, but I'm going to continue on. Hopefully you can all hear me. If you can hear me, great. I will continue. Awesome. So I want to go back to Anthony and ask you, have you dealt with racism or microaggressions in your life? And if so, in what ways? And how have you dealt with them? How have you used maybe sports and athletics and your experiences that you've had, the conversations with your father to deal with those kind of experience? And what have been your responses to those?
I've dealt with it. It's like, it's real funny. I've never had to deal with somebody calling me the N-word. I haven't dealt with somebody yelling from the side, calling me all kinds of different names. I haven't dealt with that, but there's a certain type of racism that bothers me, and that's if I'm with some friends. And it happened when me and three football players were moving into a house outside of Eugene, and we were all Black, and we rented the house for the year. And as we're moving in, one of the neighbors came by and said, "Are you guys moving some people into that house?" And we said, "No, we're moving into the house." And they're like, "What? Really?" And she looked at me, and I said, "Yeah." And then so her husband came down. I'll never forget this. And he goes, "Aren't you Anthony Newman?" And I said, "Yeah." He goes, "Oh yeah, you guys are Duck football players." And we said, "Yeah." And she goes, "Oh, okay, that's different. You guys are Duck football players. That's different." And I was like, "Different?" I'm different now because I'm a Black, Duck football player, or I'm just a Duck football player. Now that, if I was just a regular young Black man working at the Chevron down the street, you wouldn't go for that. But since I'm a football player, it's okay. That bothered me a lot. That struck me in a way like, how these people really think. They cheer for you as a football player when you're on the field. As soon as you drive off from the stadium, from Austin Stadium, everything's different. And then being pulled over, just like the English said she got pulled over. I got pulled over because of my skin. I've seen a guy, in Eugene. He looked right at me, and we caught eye to eye. Next thing you know, he getting behind me and pulling me over, and it's happened more than once. Probably maybe 10 or 15 times. And so those type of things. And I always ask my dad, so what do I do? What is there that I can do? He says, just don't break the law. He says, because people wait for you to break the law, and then they can jump all over it and add some racism to it. But if you're just doing the right thing, they got nothing bad to say about you.
Yeah, thank you, Anthony. I think one of the things that we recognize in these spaces is that microaggressions aren't small, right? It's the term microaggression, but we realize that they're really big because they actually are actions that pull at the humanity of Black people. So asking questions, inquiring about things that would actually diminish who you are as a human being serves as a microaggression, and its intent is to subrogate you or to alienate you or to other you. When we begin to other people, it's like, okay, you're okay because you're a football player or you're an athlete. But in actuality, it's a microaggression that it's attempted to pull at the fabric of your very being, of who you are. So, Gloria, you're currently at the U of O. Have you dealt with racism? Have you dealt with microaggressions currently in your athletic career? Or to alienate you or to other you?
Yeah, I'm definitely no stranger to microaggressions. I think growing up, there were so many messages that were inferential or implied. It was never like, I hate you because you're black, but it was always like, why does your hair stick up like that? Or why do you bring your smelly African food and things like that you hear over and over. And it starts to kind of like tear at your confidence and make you feel like I'm lesser than in this way. And there's definitely been instances here in Eugene just going to the store and people coming up and like touching my hair. Or I remember there was a couple that tried to take a picture of me because they were like, your skin is so dark, I've never seen skin like that, like this is amazing. And it's such a dehumanizing experience because it makes you feel like a circus animal, or like this is not a space that I belong in. And those kind of situations and those messages continue to make you feel like I'm not equal. And I think that's something that I continue to fight every day. Is like, this is not my fault. Like, I know who I am, and I am okay to have my privacy and to say that's disrespectful and be polite, but at the same time say like I deserve my space. And I think that's something like as a Black woman that's hard to do, is to continue to demand your humanity and continue to say like this is not okay. And even if these are subtle messages, even if you didn't mean it in a disrespectful way, I'm still owed my privacy, my space, and that's a human right. That's something that we all deserve. And be polite, but at the same time say like I deserve my space.
Actually address those issues, because it does pull at you when someone asks to touch your hair, or they look at you as an anomaly. And there's a long history of that kind of behavior in the country. I refer to them as racial ideas. And racial ideas bring about behaviors and racial behaviors that create racial spaces. And so there's a boldness that it takes to respond to those kind of spaces. So want to make sure, Jordan, that you give an opportunity to share. Have you dealt with that? You grew up, you talked about your experience. Have you dealt with discrimination? Have you dealt with microaggressions in your life at this point? And if so, how have you dealt with them?
A lot of the stuff I dealt with, it came from people that were trying to be funny. And it was really interesting growing up being biracial and then spending the majority of your time in a white community. The common thing you always got from people was, well, you don't act black, was what so many people would always say, as if there's a definition of what black is. And even when you got to the university, there were teammates or people that you interacted with that would say, well, you don't sound black, you don't dress black, you don't do this. And to me, it just seemed very ignorant, because how can you define it based upon those parameters? And it was also around the time too where mainstream media in the early 2000s, let's be honest, a show like Chappelle's Show comes out and people think it normalizes racial jokes and normalizes it to say certain things to individuals in a joking way. And you hear that from so many people, and eventually it just wears you down, because it creates this sense of, well, all right, in order to be defined as black, you have to do A, B, and C, when that couldn't be further from the truth. And so I just felt it was really important to be true to who you are and to be just a person of high character. And that's what really matters at the end of the day, because as a person of color, it's not, hey, I'm black because I do this. That's my culture. That's how I was born. That's a part of who I'm always going to be. And it's my responsibility to continue to build relationships, to help people just open their eyes to the fact that you can't put it into this tiny little box. And so it wasn't the microaggressions, but more so just these labeled stereotypes based upon what people were consuming in popular media that led them to believe that a black person is this. And it was hurtful. It was hard to really feel good about your identity at first, until you finally were able to understand that it wasn't defined by any outward appearance necessarily, or by the way that you talked. And coming to grips with that as someone that's biracial was really tough. But I'm super grateful that I had that opportunity to work through those things at the University of Oregon and talk to other athletes that were biracial, and that community sense that we've talked to before that is existing at the University of Oregon is really helpful as we're in this stage in our lives and you make that transition from high school through college into adulthood, where you learn to handle those things. And so it's unfortunate. It's kind of one of those topics of racism and stereotypes that a lot of times we don't look at because there isn't necessarily the mean spirit that goes behind expressions and sayings like these. But it just taught me that you need to be really, really careful about anything you say, whether it's in jest or a joke, when it comes to race, because at the end of the day, you're perpetuating or entrenching stereotypes that are causing people to have a narrow mind.
And thank you for calling that out. Words matter, right? I mean, words matter. Mm-hmm. And there's the intent versus impact. The intentions could be pure, but the impact still lands and still has its impact on all of us. And I'm really curious because, English, you talked about one of your methodologies for dealing with some of these things was performance, is to perform better. It added fuel to your fire. Do you still feel that way today? And then are there other methods that you use to deal with racism and microaggressions in your life today?
Have changed my perspective on it a little bit more than before. I have now grown. I feel like in quarantine, with everything happened with the Breonna Taylor incidences and everything that's been going on, storming the Capitol and stuff like that, we've kind of been forced to be a little bit more hypersensitive to color. And so I've now realized that some of the conversations that probably would have never happened with some of the people in my life are happening now. And I'm having to learn how to not take offense to everything that kind of comes across my table, and to really objectively look, because a lot of these people, as stated before, are judging based off of stereotypes. And even though there's a gray line between stereotypes, prejudices, and racism, sometimes those lines are starting to get blurred because of the hypersensitivity that we're in right now. But so because of this, I'm a little bit more patient in the fact of explaining why it's not okay. I'm a little bit patient in knowing that sometimes people aren't doing things or saying things with ill intent, but I have to find a way to not only explain to them what needs to be explained, but also it kind of brings the problem of me making sure that I don't feel the issue as well. As a Black woman, it's hard to balance that line, to tell someone that you're not okay with something, or that you're speaking out about something without being in return turned into the angry Black woman. So I have learned to now in my life not use just my performances, but use my reaction to show a different light about who I am as a person, who my people are, and what I truly stand for.
Oh, that's excellent. Helping individuals improve their cultural dexterity, so that they can be culturally dexterous, so that when they're engaging with other athletes, that they will be more knowledgeable, to Jordan's point and to your point about intent versus impact, and being more patient. But you talked about something really interesting. You talked about the pandemic. So we'd be remiss if we didn't talk about that. And Anthony, maybe share with us how you have dealt with the pandemic, because we just heard English describe kind of being more patient and how it's impacted her, and the good things that have come out of it. How has it impacted you and how you show up in your life?
A great question. And I think it's all about patience, just trying to control what you can control. My dad used to say all the time, don't worry about things you can't control. If it's going to rain tomorrow, why stress over it? You have to deal with it. You have to adjust to it, be adjustable. So being a football player, everything's about adjusting, during practices, during games. At halftime, you're getting blown out, and you got to find a way to adjust to make it better. This pandemic is the same way. It's adjusting as you go. When you look at all the different professions like basketball and baseball and football, they had to adjust on the way during their seasons. I mean, talk about adjusting. It was crazy. Well, our lives are the same way. I mean, we don't do the same things we normally do. And so you can't get mad about it. You can't get frustrated and go, well, it's so-and-so's fault. You start pointing fingers because there's still an issue. There's still a pandemic, and you still got to be safe and take care of yourself. So I told my family, just do what you need to do to take care of you and take care of the people around you that you love and make sure they understand. Some people you talk to, guys, they don't understand. And you can't have those conversations. It's like having a conversation with a drunk person. You're never going to convince them of a certain situation. So you just take care of what you need to take care of. And our family was okay. If we're stuck in the house, we're stuck in the house. We got to find some things to do in our house that are constructive, things that we can keep going in life. And it's hard. We have a daughter at home right now. Because of the pandemic, she should be at school down in LMU, but she's in our house. Her room is set up like like a little office / dorm room. and she's about to graduate. She doesn't get to walk. She has to walk in our house for the graduation, and those type of things that are sad, and it is tough. But at the same time, you're like, well, that's what we're dealt with. What else can we do? We can't climb under a rock and just sit there and go, poor me. We got to keep moving. And I take those same traits that I had in football, like, hey, we're down 45. Let's try to come back. Can we come back at halftime? Can we score 46 points in 2 quarters? I don't know, but let's try. Not just sit there and go, oh, poor us. We're getting whipped. Let's just go home. So that's what this pandemic for us my family's been about. Trying to survive, trying to do the right thing, and stay positive. And that's the biggest thing for me and my wife, trying to stay positive around our daughter, because I know it's tough for her as well.
No, that's excellent. And listen, if the pandemic can be capsulized in being down 45 in the fourth quarter, I'm sure there's a lot of people that probably feel that way. Gloria, I've got to come to you on this, Gloria, because I have a daughter, Jordan, who will be at the University of Oregon very soon. And you are currently there. You're experiencing the pandemic in a unique way, something that many of us just did not have to deal with. How are you handling the pandemic? How are you handling all of the things that you have to take care of as a current student with all of the restrictions that are around you?
It's been a huge adjusting period. And I think that's an understatement because everybody's going through ups and downs. This pandemic can really take away a lot of security and like what you know. So just even hearing, okay, practices are canceled. I'm transferring. We're not having a season in the fall like every other time I played volleyball. That's new. And just trying to roll with the punches and see like, how can I adjust? How can I keep my level of play? How can I be a good teammate? How can I stay consistent through all this inconsistency? And just playing in masks and social distancing and all these new rules, I think as hard as it's taught me a lot. And for all the resiliency that I've needed in my life, I'm using it right now because I think we continue to learn something new. Games get canceled. Things just are not going to go your way all the time. And I think it's like what everyone said, like you just have to keep your head up. There's no use sitting and crying about it. And how can I be the best athlete I can be? And that attitude has helped a lot. And I think there's a lot of good that has come from it. And adjusting makes it worth it when you win and when you overcome those obstacles. So it makes it all worth it in the end, just keeping your head up and knowing like, if I can push through this, I can do anything. And once this pandemic is gone, the sky is the limit for me. So.
No, that's excellent. That's excellent. Jordan, I want to ask you the same question because you've taken on new adventures new role with the Portland Trailblazers. Different things are happening for you. I know you welcomed in some new additions to your family. So how have you dealt with all of the change in addition to the pandemic?
Yeah, we were pregnant during the pandemic and gave birth to our second son. So it's kind of doing it on a different type of hard mode there. But kudos to my wife. She's just been amazing during this whole process. And I think what we've all learned during this time is just the value in relationships because we're missing them so much. We're missing community. We're missing the connection we have with other people. And it makes you really want to strive to make all of your current relationships the best that they can be. And I think also what we've seen just as a society during this pandemic is that there's a lot of stuff that's came up to the surface. And I think it's fair to say that the pandemic has caused some of that to come to the surface. And with a lot of the tension we're dealing with in this country, it's good to get all of that to the surface and now deal with it. It's still going to be a long process, but I think when you look at how we've handled this, it makes you have a greater appreciation for community and people and also compassion because I think when you hear so many stories of just how difficult this has been for so many people, it really makes you in tune with living a life that helps better the lives of other people. And when you start to think about that, you start to look beyond color, you start to look beyond backgrounds, and you look at each other as your fellow man, your fellow woman, and how I can lift them up. And I think that's what I'm hoping galvanizes people when we do return back to normal. And we've all had so much time now to just think about things because we've had this influx of time that we normally haven't had where we've been busy with our sports, our seasons, our obligations. But now we've had so much time over the past year to just think about every aspect of our lives. And when we combine that with what's happened in society, I think coming out of this, there's this push that we've got to be better and we've got to do better. And everyone individually is thinking about what they can do to help improve their own community. And I think with the focus being that, that's really going to help us as we start to sort of turn a new page. And it's going to be a new chapter in everybody's life when we're done with all this. So, all in all, the pandemic, it's been difficult for different reasons, of course, but we have so much to be grateful for as a family. And I think you're looking towards improving everything when you get out of this and doing the best you can to bring people back together again when we do get to our new normal after all this.
Excellent. Thank you for that. And you raise a very valid point, being being better after this is over. So English, I want to come to you and ask, in the space of being a Black athlete at the U of O, what are the things that you feel like Black athletes felt or are feeling or need to do while they're at U of O to represent and handle their Blackness while they're there? And what are your thoughts on what the future should look like or what it could look like for Black athletes at the U of O and things that they could be doing that would be better at the end of this pandemic?
I believe that, when I was at U of O, I could probably count on, well, I knew everyone was on the team that was Black. And there was the community, our community and our resources. I know now they're a lot better than they were when I was at the school. So I would say that they definitely need to not be open to the community that you're being entered in, be open to the cultures and the people, learn more about Eugene, learn about the people there, because the more you learn about them, the better you'll be able to navigate in that lifestyle. I think that something that all Black people have is the ability to be a chameleon. And I would say to definitely harbor that gift and understand that, to be able to survive in this world, you have to be able to survive in all types and facets of life. And so just definitely, I would just say, just be more open, heal yourself of the scars that have been opened up, especially throughout these times where, like we said, everything has floated to the surface and now everything looks really ugly. And while everything is healing, be open and heal from everything, and just really try to, like he said, be human, be a human first before anything, be a human first. And I think that going forward, the university and the people in the community around the university, like we said before, will all start coming together and just being one family that supports Ducks and that want Ducks to win.
One family. That sounds really good. And you raise a point when you talk about being a chameleon, being able to move into different spaces. I believe W.E.B. Du Bois referred to that as a dual consciousness. And we certainly know that that is part of the Black experience. I just want to ask Anthony, how did you deal with your Blackness as an athlete? And then what would you also say? English gave some very good foundational tools for the future. What would you say also to that for Black athletes going to the U of O?
Well, I'm always talking about just, be strong in who you are, be confident in who you are. People are going to try to put you down for numerous reasons because you're a Black man, you're a Black woman, all different types of things. People are jealous. And when people are jealous, they're going to talk bad about you. And so we always try to tell people, and I tell my kids, to be proud of who you are, be proud of where you come from and your ancestors come from, and go out and seek more information about it and find out all about that information of where you come from and who you are as a person, because that makes you stronger. It makes you able to stand up to certain things. And also, I think English said something about stand up, stand up to certain things that people are saying. Don't just kind of sit there. If you hear someone say, again, oh, you're Anthony, you're different, you're a football player, say something about that. Say, well, no, I'm not different. Be proud of who you are as a Black person, not a football player. Football player has nothing to do with it. And so that to me is really, really, I try to convey that to my own children, just because you're put in a bottle, and it, no joke, you're still in a bottle. Even though people, you're popular because you're an athlete, you're still in a bottle, in this country. And you're going to be viewed a certain way by a whole lot of people. And a lot of those people won't say anything in front of your face, but they're going to say a whole lot behind you. And that's what you find out. I think that's what's going on right now. You're seeing a whole lot of people come up and say certain things and feel, a certain way. And you're like, what? Oh, I didn't know they were like that. Wow. Okay. I see how you really feel. So I think for me, and my parents helped me with this, is just be proud. Be proud of my skin. Be proud of my curly hair. I don't have any curly hair anymore, but when I was young, I had curly hair. Be proud of your skin tone, light or dark, it doesn't matter. And don't worry about what everybody else is saying. And I think if I can, talk to the young Black ladies and Black men about, feeling that way when you go out in the public and talking to people, and people are looking at you in a certain way. Hey, be proud of all that attention that you're getting. People are looking at you. It's not a bad thing. It's a good thing because they're intrigued by you. And I want that. I know sometimes it gets old, but I still got to be proud of that or feel that way towards or how people are looking at me. For me, I think it's really important to understand that. And my daughter went to Oregon her freshman year, that she got involved in a lot of diversity groups that were at Oregon. And that's what I like. See, they didn't have that when I was going to school. When I went to Oregon, there was no diversity groups. There were just, the Black guys on the Oregon football team. And that was it. We didn't have fraternities and Black sororities and stuff like that. The Black union, student union, it wasn't there. But now they're starting to, show up a little bit. I know, at U of O, it's not very diverse, but still there's some diversity there. So if it's there, get involved with it, do something with it, try to, bring it out so people can understand who these people are and where they come from and what they're all about.
Excellent. And I want to, as we get closer to the end of our conversation, I want to pose a question, and I'm going to start with Gloria, but I want to move and allow each of you to respond to it. So what can the Duck family do as a collective to foster a better environment for inclusion and equity among student athletes that are Black and the entire Duck family? What are the things that you feel that can be done to help move us all forward? Gloria, let's start with you with that question.
Yeah, I think that the education piece is so important. Like what we know can help everyone feel so much more comfortable and inclusive and continue to create really welcoming environments. So like learning about systemic racism, cultural racism and like microaggressions and blatant racism. And I think those kind of things can help Black people, especially the few that are here in Eugene, feel like, okay, the people that I'm surrounded with really know what I'm going through. And I don't feel like I constantly have to explain or feel like an alien for having to say like, this is my hair, this is the food that I eat, and this is the music I listen to. Um, but I think that education piece is so important because it helps everyone feel like I know something about you. And it's so relaxing to look to white teammates or coaches and people around me and know like they know a little bit about me, even if I don't have to tell them, okay, I'm uncomfortable in this situation or this is something that I'm not used to. And I feel like that's just so important. And that's something that can be overlooked sometimes because that burden as a Black person of saying like, okay, is this awkward? Am I overstepping if I say this is not something that I do, or this is what I need as a Black person? That can be a hard thing to say, especially when you feel like, okay, I'm the only person that feels this way. So that education piece is really important.
Excellent. Thank you very much. And so as we reach just a couple of minutes, I think Gloria is going to have the last word. Unless any of you have something pressing that you want to say to close this out, I'll pause for a moment and give you an opportunity if there's anything that you'd like to say as your last statement. Okay.
I definitely want to say that what Gloria said is definitely the education part, but also let's all be open to dialogue, because I know coming from one side, you can say, you know, I'm demanding this kind of respect and I'm demanding this, but I've had friends that I grew up with my whole life that never experienced or never really saw color, but never realized that they were acting in things such as white privilege or things in that manner. So be open to the dialogue, be open to have the conversation, as much as it may be repetitive, as much as it may be painful to have, irritating, long overdue. The conversation is necessary for change. And as long as we can start talking, better we can understand each other, and the more we can move forward as a society.
Wonderful. Thank you so much, English, for those closing thoughts. And I think on that note, Jordan Kent, Anthony Newman, Woo! English Gardner, Gloria Buteri, thank you so much for the insight that you've provided. Let's go Ducks, and let's go equity, Ducks. Diversity, and inclusion. Yes. Thank you all for joining us this evening. Thank you for spending your time. Absolutely my pleasure. I was in an all-star cast, and it doesn't get much better than this. Have a great evening.
Good night, guys.
Good night.
Good night, guys.